Hello, I'm Tone Lanzillo, and this is Climate-Duluth. Our guest today is Kent Goodwin. Kent comes from Kimberley, British Columbia, and also is the co-creator of the Aspen Proposal. Welcome, Kent.
Well, hi, Tone. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Why don't we begin, if you wouldn't mind, just sharing a little bit about the Aspen Proposal, the genesis, how it began, and an overview of what you all have been working on.
Sure. So to start with, I want to explain that Aspen, as we use it, is an acronym that stands for Attempting to See Past the Ends of Our Noses. And the Aspen Proposal is a document that we put together that basically describes what we think the necessary elements of a sustainable civilization would be. So a group of people in my small town have been working on community and environmental issues for decades and decades. And we are not particularly thrilled with the trajectory of our current civilization. We think we're going to get into trouble if we don't change our direction. So we sat down and tried to imagine what it would take for humans to have a well-functioning civilization on this planet for the long term and allow nature to flourish as well. And we couldn't find anything on the internet that succinctly did that. So we decided to write our own, put it together, and now we've created a web page to host the document. And we're working with social media ads and online forums in a number of ways to try to get people to think about it.
Okay. I know there's a certain list of guides or principles that you've listed. One is we will have learned to fit in within the ecosystem. If you wouldn't mind sharing some of the other kind of principles within the proposal.
Right. So the proposal is very short. It's only about a page long. And it makes the point that humans are a part of nature. We have evolved on this planet and are ideally suited to live here and should be able to live here with a modicum of technology and have pretty wonderful lives without disrupting all other living things. So what we're talking about is reduction over time in the human population just by parents choosing to have smaller families. That's already happening in most countries, and in half the countries on Earth, we're below replacement value already. But we're also looking at a change in our culture. We need to remember that we are a part of nature, that we depend on nature for a whole host of services that are provided to us, and start to respect it in a way that we haven't been over the last, a few centuries at least. So part of it is as well is recognizing that because of our evolutionary history, built into us at a very basic level, all kinds of wants and desires and tendencies that we have to recognize and we have to allow for. And what worked for hunter-gatherers doesn't necessarily work for a society of billions. And we have to start understanding how to meet our needs, how to feel psychologically secure without tearing the planet apart. So when you put it all together, we end up with a smaller society, a stable population, circular economies, and some cultural mechanisms that help us connect with and appreciate the rest of nature.
Given the creation of this conversation that you've all began, what are your hopes or plans for this conversation, not just in British Columbia, but in other parts of the world over the next few years?
We, first of all, recognize that this is going to be a slow process. It's going to take a while to grow the initiative. Our intent is just to get people thinking and get people conversing about the long-term future of humanity. Not everyone has the time or inclination to do that. We're well aware of that. But we do think that it will grow slowly as more people get involved. We're using Facebook ads to connect with people all over the English-speaking world. We've just run a couple in India and got a very good response. We're starting one in Nigeria today that will run for a week to see what kind of response we get from people there. But it's not going to be the few of us in this small town that make this happen. We've often said that we've created the proposal and we're releasing it into the wild. And it is our hope that other people will step in, as you have done by asking me for this interview, and help us share the message and start conversations everywhere.
That's great. One of the things that I read about the Aspen Proposal was a line that talks about participating in, I think you called it, the cooperative exercise of learning about ourselves, the universe, and our place in it. And for myself, I'm very much involved in climate education and teaching, so I'm very interested in learning. Any thoughts, reflections on how we can support this cooperative exercise of learning amongst ourselves?
Well, I guess I would make the point initially that the Aspen proposal is not intended to replace all the work that people are doing on various issues around the world. Most of the people that helped write it have been working for decades on environmental issues and community issues and social justice issues, and we all have to keep doing that. Education is key. The more we can connect with people and help them learn about the impacts we're having on the planet, the better. The key to that, I think, is to learn to listen to people as well and not just preach. We have to start where people are at, think about why they might be resistant, what their fears are, what their hopes are, and start conversations that gently turn things in the direction of thinking about the long term and the big picture.
In the many conversations I'm sure that you've all had with different groups of people, have you been surprised, pleasantly surprised by the response from certain groups of people, be they high school age, college, elders? What has been the response from the different groups?
Yeah. Well, a lot of our conversations have been online and in social media, and we don't often know the background of the people we're talking to, how old they are, or what their professions are, or any of that. We have had a wide range of responses. I have been surprised both positively and negatively. Some people read through the Aspen proposal and think it is something they've been waiting for all their life, and they offer to help share it. Other people bounce off it the minute they see long-term thinking. They figure we're part of some conspiracy to take away their freedom or something. So it takes a bit of work on our part to try to reach out to those people. We get all kinds of reactions. We've had people initially very negative that have come around and start to understand that something like this is necessary. And we've had other people that we just can't get through to, and fair enough. There are going to be a lot of those people.
Right. Well, like you said, it's very important to begin the process by just listening and learning
Yeah.
from each other. On a personal note, where did your interest in all this begin, including your desire to be a co-creator of the Aspen proposal?
I'm not exactly sure. I think I started sort of thinking about and paying attention to the future a little over 40 years ago when my first child was born. That sort of changed the stakes for me. It was no longer just about me. It was about my family and their family and the future all in the long run. So that got me thinking about the bigger picture and where the world was going. There were some wonderful TV series on CBC television in Canada here by David Suzuki that talked about a planet for the taking, and if you love this planet, and that really stimulated a lot of thought. And from there, it just led naturally to getting involved in local groups, helping to start some local groups. and doing what I could at the local level to try to protect natural areas and make our community more sustainable. I spent the last 11 years as a member of my city council, though I'm stepping aside this fall so I can spend more time with the Aspen Proposal.
Oh, wow. In your time on the city council, and some of us here in Duluth spend a lot of time with our city council trying to work on these issues, but what has been your experiences serving on the city council and trying to create a conversation about these issues and maybe undertake certain projects or initiatives?
Right. Well, the Aspen proposal only came together in the last year. So although I've shared it with my fellow councilors, we haven't had much time to really do anything with it. But in general, I've been blessed to be on a city council that is quite aware of issues like climate change and pollution and water quality. And at every stage of our operations, we have been looking at how we can make positive change in those regards. Municipal governments don't have a huge amount of excess money to invest in things. In my province, the provincial government has also been very supportive and has encouraged municipalities, and we've always been able to take advantage of a series of grants and other forms of funding to help us do the things that would make things better here. There's a long way to go. We certainly aren't perfect, but I think we're heading in the right direction here.
Cool, cool. I know you and I have had several conversations before today, but one question I always enjoy asking is what has motivated or inspired you to do the work you've done, not just on the city council, but in working on the Aspen proposal?
There are probably a few things. I've certainly been inspired and motivated by all the activists that have come before me, everyone from David Suzuki to Greta Thunberg and many, many more. I think I've already mentioned I'm motivated partly by my children, and now I have grandchildren, and I really need to think about what kind of world they're going to inherit. But I spend a lot of time in nature because I live in a small town. I can get out in the forests around our community just about every day. I'm especially intrigued by lichens, and it certainly helps me keep myself centered and understand that what we're working for is not just for humans, but it's for all the rest of our family. Because all those living things that I walk past every day are indeed related to me. We evolve together, and that for me is a pretty big motivation.
Right, right. I appreciate that. I have two grown sons, and I've just become a grandfather twice in the past year, so I can truly relate to what you're sharing. For cities and towns, whether it be Kimberley or Duluth, where we're from, what do you think are some of the challenges that we'll be facing or need to address in the next 100 to 200 years?
First of all, I would say that the major challenge that I think we face in this day and age is not environmental problems. I think we have solutions to just about every problem that we could face in regard to those kinds of issues. The problem is we just aren't listening to each other, and we aren't working together. We don't have a clear consensus about what is important and where we have to go. And the Aspen proposal is an attempt to try to build that at a global level, but I think people in their communities need to spend time talking to their neighbors and thinking about where we need to go. And everyone needs to give a bit. We need to compromise. We can't be ideological about this. We have to think about what will work in a local community. If there's a particular problem that people see, it may be completely different from a problem someone else sees. So we need to understand each other's perspectives and try to work together on those. To me, that's always going to be the problem with humans. These big brains that we have developed through millions of years of evolution are indeed a blessing, but it's a bit of a double-edged sword. We're not we don't operate from instinct. We really have to hash things out.
From the beginning of your term as the city council to the present, what are one or two things that you are have a sense of accomplishment as far as what the city of Kimberley has been able to do over the last 10 or 11 years?
There are a few things that I think we've done very well at a purely local level. We've maintained a very strong focus on renewing our local infrastructure. So that's everything from sewer pipes and water pipes to roads and street lighting. We sort of realize that if you don't continually invest in those things year after year, you're going to end up with a big mess on your hands in the future. Mm-hmm. When I started on city council, Kimberley was until 2001 a booming mining town, and then the mine closed and the population of Kimberley started falling and the economic conditions were terrible. People weren't sure the town was going to survive. By the time I got on council in 2011, things were turning around a bit. And in the last 11 years, we've gone from worrying about fading away to having to deal with too much growth. Kimberley, it turns out, is a good place to be, and people want to be here. And now the challenge going forward is, how do we manage that? How do we keep a bit of a lid on it, but realize that we can't stop it? And that's what we've started to grapple with, and future councils are really going to be wrestling with.
Wow, that's interesting, because I think that's a question Duluth has begun to ask, given the news coverage Duluth has gotten of being what they call, I guess, a climate haven city.
There you go.
Yeah, so we've had a number of people move here from other parts of the country. If someone is interested in learning more about the Aspen proposal, what are the different ways they can learn more about it?
Just about all our information is on our website at www.aspenproposal.org. You will also find an email address there, which is folks@aspenproposal.org, and people can email us anytime, and we're happy to answer questions. We also are very happy to do these kinds of interviews and meet with groups by Zoom or some other online forum. We have a Reddit discussion group. If any of people listening to this are on Reddit, there isn't a lot of activity in that yet, but it's sitting there waiting for people to ask questions and make comments. And over time, we'll probably think of a bunch of new ways for people to learn more about the Aspen proposal.
That's great. And I guess kind of closing up our talk today, if you were to share something with the community of Duluth, from your experiences, your reflections, what is something you'd like to leave with us here in Duluth as we kind of look towards the future?
I would say the best way to prepare for the future is by inventing it. It's up to us to create the future. The Aspen proposal is not a prediction, it's a goal. It won't happen unless enough of us want it to happen. The same is true at a local level. You need to envision what kind of community you want to have, and then you need to talk to everyone in your community and see if you can get some agreement on how to get there. And if you can do that, you'll get there.
Right. Yes, Ken, I really want to thank you for spending a few minutes with us today. I promise you that the city of Duluth will be staying in touch and hopefully spreading the word about the Aspen proposal to a number of individuals and groups in our city. And so we really thank you for us spending a few moments with us today.
Well, thank you, Tone. It's been great to talk to you again.
Great, thanks.
Okay.
And in closing today, it's quite interesting, since Kent mentioned his children and grandchildren. I'd like to read an excerpt from a book entitled Warmth, Coming of Age at the End of Our World by Daniel Sherrill. And most of the book is about the author writing a letter to his future child And I just want to read a short excerpt from the end of this book. Quote, "What is imagination except the conjuring of the hypothetical, a line of attention spooled out beyond the senses? In conjuring you, my own hypothetical child, is only one small step in a much larger task of imagination. To live in the Anthropocene is to realize that your attention must be broadened far beyond the bounds of your individual circumstance, expanded to encompass people, species, objects, and eras with which you are both utterly unfamiliar and inextricably bound. The hares in the mountains, the fossils in the cliffs, the people of Far Rockaway in Australia, and the future and the now. This practice is both daunting and divine, quotidian and unending. In this, it resembles religion. As the philosopher Simone Weil wrote, attention, taken to its highest degree, is the same thing as prayer. It presupposes faith and love." Thanks for joining us today. Take care.